Hello everyone, welcome back to another Bill's Planet Finance journey. This is update number 2, and today we'll be going through Bill's performance in the month of February 2025. So in the first update, we introduce who Bill is, we set up his budget, and then we assess the January performance. So what we'll do now is expand this section and change the period to February of 2025. And we'll do the same for the other sections. So let's start off with the single dimension analysis. As you can see, Bill had a total income of $3,550 and total expenses of $2,830. That gave him savings of $700, which is a savings rate of 20%. So still staying over the recommended savings rate of 20%. As you can see, his top 3 expenses were rent, lunch and dinner, and supermarket. If we scroll down to check out the lunch and dinner category, we can see here that according to the trend, it actually has increased. In January, we had it at $350, and now in February, we had it at $424. So this is 69% over his budget, which isn't great. And he did go over budget in several other categories, but then decreased in a couple others, which is really good. So what else can we see here? We can see that his rent is currently 28.17% of his income, and generally he only gets income from salary and just 1.4% from bank interest. February started with a balance of $10,800 and it ended with $11,540. If we look at the transfers table here, we can see that $1,000 came out of his spending account, so into his emergency fund, and then it looks like Bill withdrew $250 from his emergency fund and put them back into the spending account one. Let's check out the multidimensional analysis. I've selected only January and February, so we can actually start seeing the charts and how they compare to each other, as well as the total income and expenses by different date dimensions, which is always interesting to see. So we can already see that with 2 months of data, his average income monthly is $3,550, but then this can be extrapolated to an annual income of $42,000. And together with the $33,000 of expenses, his projected savings are around $9,200. And if we take a look at the dashboard, we can see here lovely little charts showing his performance over the last couple of months, how the balance has evolved over time, and a snapshot of how February performed overall. Looks like he did go over budget by $330, which means he didn't really save the $1,000 we initially predicted during the setup, but $700 in this case. And in the first update, we actually gave Bill some recommendations on what to do to make sure he reaches his savings goals, which was basically to send money to his savings account or emergency fund straight after his salary is paid. So as you can see, in January, he didn't do that. However, in February, we can see that he did follow that advice of getting the salary, the interest, and on the same day, sending $1,000, so his intended savings rate, straight into the emergency fund. Looks like his spending was a little bit higher in certain categories, and that meant that he had to bring back some money that he sent into his spending account so he could actually pay rent and continue his expenses for the rest of the month. So the best way to fix this issue is to actually work with bucket systems, which we'll explain shortly. So let's see what's going on with his accounts. Currently, the spending account has $190 left, and his emergency fund has $11,350. We can see that his expenses, at least his budgeted expenses, are $2,500. Therefore, if we just get the emergency fund amount and we divide it by $2,500, so his monthly expenses, that gives us a figure of 4.54. That essentially means that based on this emergency fund, Bill could actually survive without an income for 4.5 months. And what we've done is we've actually created a simple calculator here in this section, and we called it a needs calculator. So how does it work? We look at how much Bill earns overall per month or by whatever period you want, and we want him to have a particular amount in his savings account to serve as a buffer, but also as an emergency fund if an emergency literally happens and maybe he loses his job. The ideal goal will be to have $15,000 in that emergency fund, because using the average budgeted expenses of $2,500, that means that $15,000 would represent 6 months for Bill to survive on, basically. So currently he has $11,300 and he needs $3,650 to reach this particular goal. So how can he reach this particular goal? We've created two scenarios, one of them based on historical averages and another one based on the budget that we set up. So let's start with the one based on historical averages. Based on his savings of the last couple of months, his average savings are $770 per month, and it will take approximately 4.74 months to save this amount. So this is calculated by getting the goal, subtracting the current amount, and dividing it by the current savings. Alternatively, based on the budget, if he actually saves $1,050 per month, it will take him 3.48 months, or let's say 3.5 months, to save that amount to reach his goal. And ideally, we will want to reach this particular goal before starting directing savings or surplus money into investing. The goal here is to explain how Bill could actually achieve this in 2 months instead of 4.5 or 3.5. If he actually wants to get this done in 2 months, then he needs to save $1,824 per month to get an emergency fund of $15,000. And this is calculated by getting the amount that he needs and dividing it by 2 months. What does this mean? Then it means that in the next 2 months, Bill shouldn't spend more than $1,725 per month so that he can actually reach this goal in 2 months. And the way we calculated this is we grab this cell in dashboard M79, essentially his expected income per month, and we subtract it from the amount that he needs to save. And if we look at the past 2 months, those expenses have been $2,700 and $2,800, whereas it should be almost $1,000, well, a little bit more than $1,000 less. However, looking at his expenses so far, it seems like there's a massive amount of money being spent on dining out and things like alcohol and shopping even. So what we'll try and do is to basically cut down on these expenses and even assess certain bills that Bill might have. Like, for example, let's say he has a monthly subscription in a gym, but maybe there's another one that's cheaper and he can transfer to that one. Or maybe his health insurance premiums are a bit too high and maybe he could increase the deductibles or change to another company. So there are different ways of achieving this goal. And based on the 2 months that we've tracked his expenses, it seems like there is a lot of inefficiencies here that we could cut down. The second part that we wanted to talk about is the bucket system. This table was created by essentially looking at Bill's budget setup. Just grabbed all of these expenses and the budget of February. And then what was done is we removed all the zeros and just kept the categories at which he's spending. So we've kept the categories, the budgeted amount, and then all we did was we divided that amount by the total income to get the percentage of income. So all of those expenses equal 70.42%. And if we add the savings, that is 100% of his income. So what we're doing here is looking at the bucket that he has in each category, and that equals to $2,500 of expenses. But we said the max amount he should spend is $1,725. So we need to find a way to actually reduce this to, let's say, 1,750. How can we actually reduce this? So here on the right hand side, maybe I'll just copy all of them and we can just change them here, see how it looks. And we'll reduce a couple of these numbers to see how the total expenses look like. So we reduced the budget that he currently has, and it has a sum of $1,800. It doesn't really match the 1,700 because it still needs to be realistic, right? Hopefully in 2 months he will actually reach that goal by maybe making certain sacrifices in a few categories, but also looking at potential ways of increasing his income, maybe changing to a different bank that offers a higher interest rate, and trying to improve at work to essentially get a promotion, because currently we're looking at a particular scenario where someone is salaried, so he can't just magically increase his income. So if we get the new percentage of incomes, so this divided by the income, we can see now the new percentages. Rent doesn't really change, stay at 28%, but you can see how all the other sections have been reduced. And now, how do we actually ensure that Bill sticks to this? The best thing to do here is to actually create different bank accounts that can help him stick to these goals. So currently he only uses one spending account in a bank and then the savings account probably in the same bank. Ideally what we'll do is open different bank accounts where he can direct certain expenses to that particular bank account. So for example, we can have one bank account for rent, we can have another bank account for bills, and then a third bank account of the rest of his expenses. So the way these buckets will work is he'll essentially get his income, he'll send the expected savings of $1,800 to his emergency fund, and then the rest of the money won't just stay in the main account. What he'll do is he'll distribute those remaining funds into these 3 bank accounts, and that is a really good way psychologically of sticking to the budget based on the amount of money that was sent there. So when he pays off all his bills and the rent, and he has this remaining amount in the other transactions bank account, he'll be less motivated to spend more. For example, I don't know, he'll have $300 left. And he's like, okay, cool. I could spend it all in a $100 dinner tonight and 10 coffees this month, but I'll actually save it and put it in the supermarket so we can save some money. It helps a lot because ideally these will reach near zero, but also they'll be locked. There won't be a necessity of transferring from one to the other or having way more in one of them and just spending more than it's required. This way it helps visually in a bank account to stick to the amount that is in each of these buckets. And if we look at it in terms of percentages, 51% of his income will be spent, 28% goes to rent, 13% goes to other transactions, and 10% goes to bills. It is a very tight budget given the circumstances of wanting to reach $15,000 in his emergency fund in essentially 2 months. It is a bit more realistic if it's 4 months or 3 months, but for the purpose of this scenario and journey of Bill, we want to really push him to the limit to see if this is actually possible. And also, it will be really nice to actually start the investing updates so we can see how different financial assets perform over time. So that's what we wanted to show in this section, the needs calculator and the bucket system that Bill will stick to. It looks like ideally by April or May, we'll start the investing journey. Over the next couple of months, we'll see how Bill performs in his budget. And we would like to show you one more thing. We thought it'd be really cool to start exploring visualization tools connected to the trackers. So in the first update and this update, we've mainly looked at the Google Sheet template, the budget tracker 4G. And as a next phase of the Planet Finance products, we'd like to start attaching Looker dashboards into all the trackers. This one is still a work in progress, but you can see how it's easier to assess certain things that are not just in a Google Sheet, but also in the dashboard. So in here, this dashboard was quickly created to look at the monthly performance of Bill, and we can change things like parent category and category. And certain tables and charts, they change according to that input. You can also assess a particular month or also both months together. So in this example, we can see that in January and February, Bill has had an income amount of $7,100 and has spent $5,500. And we see some nice visualizations here, and this can actually also be changed to different date dimensions. So if you want to see it at a bi-weekly level, you can see how he's spent at the different fortnights. Even at a weekly level, how the income and expenses are distributed by week. So it's an awesome way to assess the progress of Bill in the Planet Finance journey. We're still working through the budget analysis one, so this will be updated as time goes by, but as you can see, we can assess how that income in this example is comparing against budget and also the expenses. So feel free to check out the link in the description of this video, as we've created this whole new website where there's a specific page for Bill's Planet Finance journey and where you can track his live income, expenses, and savings in the dashboard that's directly connected to the budget tracker that we're using. And once we start with the investing journey, we'll have another dashboard for that portfolio tracker, and we'll probably even attach certain screenshots for the performance of the portfolio in a way that we can assess different snapshots. So yeah, we'll actually link this in the description of this video. Feel free to check it out, and we appreciate any feedback or even feature requests that you would like to see in both the budget tracker, the budget tracking dashboard for Bill here, and furthermore into the future, the portfolio trackers and all the future dashboards that we'll be publishing here. So that is the February update. Thank you so much for joining this second update for Bill's Planet Finance journey. If you're interested in using this particular budget tracker or any other trackers that you've seen in our demos, please follow the link in the description of this video. In the next update in March, we'll look into onboarding Bill with the investment planning tool so that we can actually project the investing goals for Bill. Hopefully in April and May, we'll start showing the investments that Bill decides to go with. And you'll see how a new portfolio tracker is developed together with a dashboard like shown before. Thank you very much.